I'm going to share with you a set of words, a phrase that is often said, and I have heard this, and in my line of work, I'm going to hear this more often, and I would like to let you know beforehand. Stop saying this shit, please. I have heard people say many times, and this is what I want you to stop saying. I tried that and it didn't work. I tried that and it didn't work. A lot of times, usually they say, I tried that once and it didn't work. Um, no, yeah, of course it didn't work. You know why? Because you're trying to get something to work. Now, what do I mean by that? Let me explain. Let me back out a little bit, right? Let's say, you're, I don't know, going through a tough time with somebody that you're in a relationship with, right? Your spouse, right? Let's say you're going through a tough time. Y'all kind of really don't like each other. At that in that moment of time, um, you're arguing, which I'm a firm believer that there should be no arguments in a relationship. But um, anyway, that's neither here nor there, right? Um, and like I said, you're going through a tough time, right? Um, and you come to someone with for advice. Like, what should I do? What should I say? You know, Help me out here, right? And that person gives you some advice, right? And or something that you could try, and your response is, of course, I tried that once and it didn't work, right? Here's the problem. It's not the tactic or the strategy or whatever it was that they were trying to suggest to you. The problem is you're trying to get something to work that, quite frankly, is not going to work, is not meant to work, will never ever work, right? Because in let's say, for instance, just continuing on with that example of two people who are having who are in a relationship with each other, and they're going through a rough season together, right? Whatever the strategy is, right? Of course, it's not going to work because, one, you're trying to end the you try whatever the rough patch is, you're trying to end it, right? And no strategy is going to really end it because you're dealing with two human beings with complex emotions. So it's not about trying something that's quote unquote going to work. It's about digging deep underneath the surface and finding out what exactly went wrong in the first place, right? See, that's work. That's not something that you handle with some sort of strategy or tactic, or let me try this, let me try that. No, that takes work, and it takes individual work, right? And also, work within the relationship, right? So there's three sets of work that needs to be done in that situation, right? Um, you know, One person has to do their own individual work. Why am I so offended by what this other person says? Why am I flying off the handle? What's going on with me to where I'm reacting the way I'm reacting to whatever is being said? Or, what is it about me that doesn't enjoy, you know, this life or my life or whatever is going on, right? And then you have to, if you're the other person in the scenario, you have to take your time and ask the same questions for yourself, independent of whoever you're in a relationship with, right? Then, and only then, you know, once you have taken the time to figure that out and answer those questions, then and only then may you have a chance of now working on the relationship, right? Because honestly, once you do that work, you might discover like this relationship wasn't right for us in the first place. We might have to go our separate ways, because now I understand myself a little bit more, and I understand that certain elements of our interactions or our relationship don't work for me. So we might have to go our separate ways, right? Again, that's an example of you know if you use the words "I tried that and it didn't work," right? In this scenario, you're trying to make something work that's not going to work, right? And but maybe it is something that can be fixed with a tactic or a strategy or something like that, right? Um, let's continue on. Let's continue with the relationship example. Let's say you and the person you're in a relationship with, your spouse or whatever, y'all have a misunderstanding, right? A more isolated, rare misunderstanding, right? Because again, like, if you constantly having arguments and misunderstanding, then that takes some much deeper evaluation. Because again, that shit's not normal. But anyway, um, but let's say you have a more isolated misunderstanding, right? And you know the strategy may be you know to approach it in uh, in a softer or more cooperative manner than you may be used to, right? And then you use the famous words, "I tried that and it didn't work," right? Um, first of all, did you? You sure about that? Because I can almost guarantee you that most of the time, no, you probably didn't, especially in that particular situation. Um, but anyway, that's a whole nother story. But anyway, um, but besides that, right? Whether or not you did it, whether or not you tried it effectively or not, which probably not, but whether you tried it effectively or not, right? And this is something that I've learned recently from Neuro Knowledge. Shout out to him. Is that the strategy? The strategy does not matter. Whatever it is that you are trying does not matter. The belief and the conviction behind whatever it is that you are trying is what truly matters, right? It really doesn't matter what you're trying and what you're doing. The conviction behind it is what's actually going to determine whether it's effective or not, right? Say for instance this video, right? My intention with this video is to so my intention with this video or these videos may be to share my perspective on seeing yourself in a more positive way, right? Um, you know, confidence, whatever, however you want to say it, right? You know, and I could try, I could film a video or two, I could try, right? I can give it a shot, right? And I do a couple videos, and then turn around, well, that didn't work, or you know I tried that, it didn't work, right? First of all, that's because I was looking for a particular outcome, you know from doing the videos. Sometimes you post a video and nobody watches it, right? Sometimes you send it out to people and they don't watch it. It doesn't pick up, right? That happens, right? But you got to build that momentum, right? So if I'm doing the video with the intention of trying to get, thousands of views, right? If I post this video hoping it'll get thousands of views, right? Then my my intention is in the wrong direction. It's pointed in the wrong direction, right? But if my intention with these videos is you know, um, to build on my philosophy, to get my ideas out of my head and into reality, right? To build momentum, you know, for um, for what it is I'm trying to build, right? If that's my intention, then each time I do a video, right, it's contributing to that overall intention, right? So there is no, I tried that and it didn't work, right? It's all building to a much bigger thing, a much bigger plan, a much bigger idea than just, I want this one video to do well, right? So my intention is not pointed in the right direction, right? Or also, too, like I said, using the videos example, I could do a video and, you know, then turn around and say, well, that didn't work, or I tried that and it didn't work. You know, what again, going back to the conviction, it doesn't matter what you try, it's the conviction behind what you try. Am I getting on these videos and, you know, barely showing any kind of interest as I talk, right? Am I getting on these videos and just, yeah, so, it's all about your intention, and you gotta have conviction, and you just gotta believe. You gotta believe in yourself, right? Because that's what matters, guys. No, ain't nobody listening to that. Don't nobody want to hear that shit. You probably could barely hear me when I said that, right? Because there's no conviction behind what I was saying, right? But the more and more I do these videos, the more and more, I'm convinced on, what I'm saying, what I believe in. And again, that's the point. It's not about trying to, make this one video the thing that, blows me up and, gets me 1 million subscribers or whatever. No, it's not about that. So, again, if you're using those words, I tried that and it didn't work, right? Pay attention to whatever your intentions are, right? That's the first thing. Second thing, did you even believe that it could have worked? Whatever it was you tried, was there any conviction behind it? Ask yourself those questions. So, hopefully this helped. Definitely helped me out, and I'll talk to you in the next one.